On April 8, 2014, Noctua announced the successor of the legendary NH-D14, the NH-D15, which was offered back then at €90 or $100 in the respective markets. Almost 10 years after the D15 release, Noctua announced the newer model, which keeps the same model number but also adds the G2 to distinguish it from the previous product. Before I proceed with the NH-D15 G2 models, there are 3 versions, I had to retest a brand new NH-D15 to have an accurate reference point. And I thought, why not offer a complete review of it to check how it fares against today's competition. Cooler's technology moves much slower than in other PC parts like GPUs and CPUs. This is why many users still prefer the 10-year-old D15 for their high-end processors. Noctua's top-notch support offers mounting upgrades and keeps the cooler compatible with all modern sockets. The G2 comes in 3 versions, standard and 2 specialized variants. Most users will choose the standard version, but there are cases where one of the other versions performs best. The regular G2 uses the same medium base convexity as most other Noctua's heatsinks, making it a perfect all-rounder that provides optimal results on AM5 with the included offset mounting and on LGA 1700 CPUs when utilizing the included seam washers, also called contact frames, to reduce CPU deformation from ILM pressure. The HBC high base convexity variant is optimized explicitly for LGA 1700 processors with full ILM pressure or permanently deformed in long-term use. It provides excellent contact quality despite the CPU's concave shape. The LBC low base convexity variant is optimized explicitly for relatively flat CPUs. As such, it offers excellent contact quality on AMD AM5 even without the offset mounting and on other comparably flat CPUs. For instance, LBC is mostly for AMD processors, so if you plan on going to Intel in your next upgrade, you should not prefer it. On the contrary, HBC performs best in Intel processors, so you should not prefer it if you plan on moving to AMD. The box is large since the cooler has large dimensions and offers plenty of information on its sides. The protection is pretty good and the cooler comes with pre-installed fans. The cooler's version is depicted on the box to help you easily identify them. The bundle includes 2 G2 fans, 2 low noise adapters, 4-pin PWM splitter cable, NT-H2 thermal compound, thermal paste guard for AM5 socket, cleaning wipe, secure FRIM 2 Plus multi-socket mounting system, 4 washers for LGA 1700, Torx T20 screwdriver, Noctua metal case badge. Although the G2's dimensions are large, the cooler is still smaller than the G1 thanks to the 9mm lower depth. It is 3mm higher though. Despite the smaller footprint, the G2 is notably heavier than the G1, 1525 grams versus 1320 grams, with both coolers having the fans installed. The cooler follows the standard double tower design utilized by most high-end air coolers nowadays. The fin stacks are asymmetrical. The width of the front fin stack has been cut by 5mm so that the loading is more balanced between the 2 fans. Moreover, due to the higher static pressure, the new fans allowed for reduced fin spacing from 1.9mm to 1.6mm. The G2 has 23 extra fins, increasing the total fin surface area by 20%. The G2 increased the number of heat pipes to 8. This increase was possible thanks to the larger base of the cooler. The more heat pipes can handle more thermal power, so the cooler is ideal for extremely power-hungry processors. Spring-loaded screws on the mounting mechanism are permanently attached, making the installation process easier. The fans contact the cooler's body through elastic bumpers which filter out vibrations, lowering noise output. The G2 fans are low-speed fans with ultra-reliable Noctua SS02 bearings which keep noise output low at low speeds. The fan has 9 blades, 2 more than the G1 fans, offering a quieter operation than lower blade count fans, but requiring more energy. I have thoroughly evaluated the G2 fans in a previous video. The installation is easy thanks to the nicely designed Secure Film 2 Plus mounting system which supports all popular and not sockets by Intel and AMD. For AMD systems, Noctua also provides offset mounting bars for AM5 sockets which shift the cooler towards the south side of the socket by 7 mm to achieve better contact with the CCD. You have to remove the center fan to access the mounting screws, and you will also need a long Torx screwdriver for easier access to them, which Noctua includes in the bundle. The cooler's dimensions are large, so you must ensure that your mainboard, especially the chassis, can accommodate it. If you have problems mounting the front fan because of RAM DIMMs with tall head spreaders, you can adjust the fan's position higher, given that your chassis has enough internal space to allow that. The G2 cooler's noise output is notably higher than that of the G1. The higher the RPM in these charts, the better. Why is the G2 noisier than the G1? According to the results that I showed you already, noise output is notably higher than that of the previous cooler, at full speed and 70% of it. This is weird because the G1 and G2 fans produce about the same noise in a clear field. I spent several hours retesting until I found out what was going on. But let's take it from the start. As you can see, both fans have slight differences in noise output at full speed. The problem is that once two of these fans are mounted on the heatsinks, the noise differences between the G1 and G2 coolers is significant, reaching 4.3 decibels at full fan speed. I expected a higher noise output in the G2 cooler because of the more dense fins and the increased number of heat pipes, but not such a significant difference. After discussing this matter with Noctua, I proceeded with more noise measurements. For starters, I tested another G2 cooler with the stock fans, which delivered similar results to the first, proving that there was no problem in the first sample I evaluated. A loose fin or a vibration would affect noise output. The next step was to install the new fans on the G1 heatsink to see if there would be any difference in noise output. To my surprise, noise output increased notably, reaching 36.6 decibels. So, the different designs of the heatsink are not the problem here. Since the G2 fans had slightly increased speed compared to the G1 fans, I conducted an additional test, dropping their speeds to the ones that the G1 fans have at full speed. I also cancelled their speed offset, having them run at similar speeds. As you can see, noise output dropped notably, but it is still significantly higher than the reading from the stock fans. The last test I conducted was to use the G1 fans on the G2 cooler. This was the most crucial test since it proved that the new fans, once in pairs, produce higher noise output than the old ones. This troubles me a lot given that the speed offset between the G2 fans, according to Noctua and the bit frequency theory, should not increase noise output, but on the contrary, keep it lower. But the real-life measurements show precisely the opposite. These recordings were taken using the same equipment with a mic in the same place and both coolers at the same distance. Automatic gain control is not enabled since the cooler's noise is high enough not to require it. The following frequency plots show the G1 and G2 coolers with their fans at full speed. As you can see, the G1's full speed noise is notably lower than the one that the G2 registers. Frequency plots: 10% fan speed, peak frequency 5 kHz, 20% peak frequency 63 Hz, 30% peak frequency 200 Hz, 40% peak frequency 200 Hz, 50% peak frequency 200 Hz, 60% peak frequency 400 Hz, 70% peak frequency 500 Hz, and the second frequency 160 Hz, 80% peak frequency 400 Hz, 90% peak frequency 500 Hz, 100% peak frequency 630 Hz. I have recorded all signals, but keep in mind that I've enabled automatic gain control to make it easier for you to reproduce them. Normalized noise test. Intel results. The temperatures are low for an air cooler, but only with the washer mode. The differences are high with the G1 cooler. CPU frequencies are high. The use of the washer mode leads to notable differences. Again, the washer mode is beneficial, allowing for higher CPU power consumption. AMD results. The CPU temperatures are high because AMD CPUs by design operate at high temperatures under high loads, adjusting their frequency accordingly to reach the desired TDP. This is why the temperature results alone don't mean much in AMD processors. To have the complete picture, we also have to look at the average frequency and power consumption. The offset mounting is an advantage that the G1 cooler didn't have. Still, it holds pretty well to the G2 cooler, whose best version is the LBC one. CPU power consumption is high for air cooling standards. Overall performance. Intel. To calculate each cooler's overall performance, I take into account three factors: the CPU's temperature, wattage, and frequency. The NH-D15 stands well, although I didn't test it with a washer mode, which works well. The best performer earning the air cooling crowd is the G2 HBC, followed by the G2 standard version, both using the washer mode. The performance difference between the old and new models is not high enough without this mode. If you have an Intel 13th or 14th generation CPU and want the best performance possible, go for the G2 HBC and use the provided washers, which make a huge difference. The G1 cooler still goes strong, especially the Chromax black version, and I haven't tried any of these two with a 1mm washer socket mode. In the normalized noise test, the new cooler has a disadvantage over the previous one because its fan spins at lower speeds. However, the new fans offer notably higher performance than the older models used in the G1 cooler, so even at lower speeds, they perform better. The G2 cooler shines at full fan speed, providing more headroom than the G1 cooler, at the expense of higher noise output. The difference from the G1 cooler that I recently evaluated reaches 9% in the HBC version with the 1mm washers. The difference is 3 to 4% to the G1 cooler without the washer mode. Since I evaluated the G1 Chromax Black a year ago, some might argue that the CPU degraded over time. This is not the case, of course, since I rarely use it and CPUs don't degrade so easily. Anyway, given that I consider the CPU's frequency in my performance algorithm, I decided to also provide comparison charts including the Noctua cooler's temperature information. So, let's take a look and see what is going on. At 20 and 25 decibels, the G1 holds firm. taking the lead from the G2 versions that don't utilize the washer mode. The difference at 30 decibels is significant if you do the washer mode. The HBC version is also a bit better here than the G1. At 35 decibels, the G2 plays alone since the G1 doesn't reach this noise level, which is good of course. And finally, at full speed, the standard G2 is about 2 degrees lower than the G1. The G2 HBC is close to 3 degrees, and with the washer mode, the difference is large, exceeding 6 degrees in the G2 HBC version. Performance per price, Intel. The performance per price score is low because of the stiff $150 price tag. If Noctua drops the price of the G1 cooler below $100, the G2 will have a tough time. See how high the Mugen 6 cooler is in this chart. I'm also waiting for some even more affordable and probably stronger than the Mugen Thermalright coolers to arrive for evaluation. Overall performance, AMD. The differences between the G2 coolers and the G1 cooler are small, and they would be even smaller if I had the G1 mounted with the offset bracket, but it wasn't available in the product I had for testing. The performance per price ratio is low because of the high price. The new NH-D15 G2 has smaller dimensions than the G1. It is noisier at full speed, but also offers higher performance thanks to its good design and the fantastic pair of fans that it is equipped with. To give you an idea, in the Cybernetics Phi fan performance standard, the G2 fans achieve diamond and titanium in airflow and static pressure, while the G1 fans are gold in both. So, the new fans are responsible for the performance increase, although once combined, their noise is higher than that of the G1 fans. I spent 2 to 3 days investigating this till I found that the new fan combination increases noise output despite the speed offset, which in theory reduces noise output. In my case, a 4.3 decibels noise difference at full speed is high, but not high enough to be perceived as annoying by most users. Usually, differences between 6 decibels and more are clearly noticeable to our ears. The smallest change most of us can perceive in noise output is about 2 to 3 decibels, depending on the set of ears you have. The new G2 fans cost $40 each, and you get 2 of them in the coolers package, so the coolers cost is $70, including the rich bundle. Still, the $150 price tag is too high. The performance difference is there, but it is not high enough to justify such a high price. Someone can find potent coolers at way lower prices from Thermalright, Scythe, Arctic and other brands focusing on less expensive products. Indeed, the performance might not be as high as the G2 coolers and the build quality is lower, including the lower performance fans, but with $150 someone can get multiple coolers from the brands I mentioned already. Wondering whether it is worth spending so much money to get the G2. If you want full support and have a long peace of mind, keep in mind that the G1 cooler is still supported and receives socket upgrades 10 years after its release. This shows Noctua's terrific support and respect for its clients. So, if you appreciate top support and need something top-notch, you could spend this amount to get the G2 cooler. After all, you don't buy a new cooler often. Else, if you believe the price is too high, which is the case indeed, go with a more affordable option. Noctua clearly stated to me during my visit to their booth in Computex that they are not willing to sell it at a lower price because of the high development cost. This means we won't see a price drop soon in the G2 cooler. So, the main issue with this product is the sky-high price. Another outcome from this review, now that we have the complete picture, is that Noctua NH-D15 is still relevant and performs well. Its primary asset is that it isn't as expensive as its G2 variant. The NH-D15 goes for $110 and the Chromax Black version for $120. The fans are the significant changes between the G1 and its G2 variant, besides the new heatsink design and the more heat pipes. Still, $110 or $120 are not a low amount for an air cooler. The NH-D15 G2 comes in 3 different models, so some might be confused. The standard version is the best choice for being as future-proof as possible. If you intend to remain in Intel for the next 10 years or so, go for the HBC, and if you are a strong AMD supporter, go for the LBC. Noctua's statement about our noise measurements. We disagree with Hardware Busters' assessment that the G2 is generally louder than the original G1. We suspect that the results Hardware Busters has obtained have to do with cooler orientation and directivity. Hardware Busters measures noise from the side of the cooler, whereas we recommend measuring from the front of the cooler because we tend to see the highest noise intensity and better consistency in this direction. By contrast, we tend to see lower noise intensity and more variations from configuration to configuration due to interference phenomena when measuring from the side. Switching the orientation to measuring from the side, we also see slightly higher SPL, with the G2 fans on both coolers, but measured from the front, where the noise intensity is highest. They are very close to each other in our measurements. Hardware Busters response. We conduct noise measurements on all air coolers on the side. This way, both fans will be at an equal distance from the mic. According to our results and experience so far, who have been conducting noise measurements for more than 15 years, the variations are in the expected range. What we mean by that is that our results are repeatable. For example, we measure some coolers again after a period and the results are similar. In the G2 coolers case, we conducted noise measurements with the cooler's orientation as Noctua suggested. The G2's noise remained similar at full speed, while it increased notably in the G1 at 35.7 decibels. So the noise difference from the G2 dropped to below 1 decibel, which is a minor difference. The fact is that according to our methodology, the worst case scenario applies, which unfortunately is not in favor of Noctua, where the G1's full speed noise drops way lower than G2's. According to Noctua's statement, switching the rotation to measuring from the side, we also see slightly higher SPL with the G2 fans on both coolers. Noctua states, and it is right, that the noise difference is not high with the specific cooler orientation. Still, our methodology revealed that there is a difference with a different orientation, which is closer to real-life applications. Typically, users have the chassis on the sides, not in front of them. As a professional reviewer, I cannot make an exception and deviate from my methodology to present the best case scenario. You will find the full review at hwbusters.com. Like the video if you liked our work, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. The more subscribers we have, the more reviews like this one we will be able to make.